Hey you, welcome back. In this video, we're gonna do part 2 of the official Django tutorial. We have already done quite a bit of stuff, right? We've gotten our local servers started, but what we want to do now is, in this video, we're gonna actually cover our admin interface and we're gonna actually start playing around with it. So it's gonna be pretty exciting. I hope you're willing and excited to see how that works, okay? And we're gonna go through this one a little bit faster. So first thing we want to do is look at the database setup, which you can frankly ignore if you're new, but later on, this is something that you should read. But for now, we're only gonna focus on this command that says Python manage.py migrate. Okay, so this is a complete continuation from the last video. Okay, so make sure you're caught up on everything from part 1. I'm gonna open up Atom and I'm gonna break out of this by doing Control-C, and I will do Python manage.py migrate, and it should give you a bunch of OKs. And what that did is created these tables that weren't created before. Okay, so they're all created like stuff with usernames and emails and permissions and all the stuff that it has to do on the back end. Okay, all right, and from here, we're gonna go on and we're gonna try to now create models. All right, so we'll define your models, essentially your database layout with some additional metadata. How Django models work is their philosophy follows the DRY principle, which stands for do not repeat yourself, which is a really commonly used acronym in the programming world. And it emphasizes using logic that helps you never really repeat yourself, right? So for example, just to give you a simple example, imagine if you had to print out a letter or print out the word boom 100 times. You could keep writing print boom, print boom, print boom, or you could do it in the dry way, which is write a for loop that prints it out 100 times, okay? So that way it allows you to stop yourself from repeating and just helps you do it at once. Now, when you start abstracting it and taking it to a higher level, that might mean taking your code from basic code and modularizing it into a function or into a class or into a package, things of that nature, okay? And that's the same philosophy Django goes off on. So instead of repeating yourself over and over again, it lets you create a class, which it then creates models out of and handles a lot of that stuff for you, okay? So we're gonna create these models, okay? And basically what we're gonna be working on in our simple poll app, we're gonna create 2 models, question and a choice. A question has a question and a publication date. So almost imagine like a spreadsheet. Let's say you create a new sheet in the spreadsheet and you call the sheet question. You have column 1 that says question text, column 2 that has a publication date. So question text on your first row might be what the hell is going on, and the publication date may be like February whatever, and your next question might be like when is Kazi gonna make the next piece of content, stop making all these crazy videos where he's outside talking to the camera, and then your publication date next to it, right? So that's how I want you to picture when we create these models. All right, with that said, let's move on. A choice is going to be its own spreadsheet or its own sheet, okay? And basically what it does is a choice has 2 fields. The text of the choice and a vote tally, okay? So the text and the vote tally. And then the question that you get to choose is actually referenced from the question model. Okay, so let's actually now write this code out. So let's go to our polls. And I'm just going to copy paste it. I recommend that you actually write it out because it's really helpful exercise for you. But just for time, I'm going to go through it faster. So we're going to put it, I'm going to paste it right here. Okay, and I'm going to save it. All right. Now we have to activate our models. Okay, so I'm going to go into my settings, my site/settings. And inside of here, I want to tell Django that we actually have this app installed. Okay, so what I want to do is polls.apps. I think it's polls config, like that. Okay, and make sure to put a comma after it because after all, it is a list with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elements. Okay. So now Django knows to include the polls app. Let's run another command. So up until now, Django had no idea what this thing that you created, this polls app. But now that you went in my site and added this under settings and added to your installed apps, now it knows that it's actually there. Okay. It's the equivalent of kind of like, let's say you downloaded an app on your Mac or your Windows, but you never installed it, right? Like you downloaded a game, but you never installed it. It's kind of like that. So we just installed it by doing this. Okay, and now what we want to do is let's run another command. Python manage.py make migrations polls. Okay, so I'm going to come into my command line. And again, to activate your virtual environment, you'll do source activate followed by the name of your virtual environment. And to deactivate your virtual environment, you will do source deactivate if you're on a Mac. If you're on Windows, then all you need to do is activate followed by the name of your virtual environment. So in this case, it'll be my site. Okay, so since I'm already activated on my virtual environment, I'm just going to do Python manage.py make migrations polls. And now you see that it says create model choice, create model question, add field question to choice. Okay. All right. By running make migrations, you're telling Django that you've made some changes to your models. In this case, you've made new ones and that you'd like the changes to be stored as a migration. Cool. And this is effectively what the SQL will look like for this. So this is not something you have to worry about if you're a beginner and you don't even know what SQL is. Totally fine. But if you have a little bit of experience, check it out. What's really cool is like bunch of this code that you would normally, like generally anything to do with databases requires you to know SQL or write SQL, okay? SQL. And for you to write raw SQL, it looks pretty complicated, right? Like for example, if you go here, there's a lot going on. If you write SQL every day, it may not be that big of a deal, but it's a lot going on. Whereas Django, it's automatically generating all this code for you, and you don't actually even have to worry about it. I just showed it to you so you can see what it actually looks like on the back end. So that's what they're showing here. And we're not going to worry about that. And since we made the migrations, we're going to commit those migrations to our database by doing Python manage.py and typing in migrate. Okay. So now it says applying polls initial, and it says okay. If I go to my migrations, I can also see this specific migration that I made. Okay. And I can read this migration whenever I want. Do not mess around with this file too much unless you know exactly what you're doing. Okay, cool. And now we're going to play with the API. Another thing about migrations, when you get a little bit more advanced, it allows you to update your database without ever losing track of it. So Flask has kind of a weird migration thing going on, whereas Django kind of comes with it. And so its database is a lot easier to play around with. Like it says, migrations are very powerful and let you choose your models over time as you develop your project without the need to delete your database or tables and make new ones. That's generally what you have to do if you're working with, like just kind of working from scratch. It specializes in upgrading your database live without losing data. So again, this is going to be really powerful and helpful as you get more advanced and as you do more things with models. So now let's play around with the API that actually Django gives to us for free. All right, so we don't actually have to write it, it just kind of comes with it. So I'm gonna go, and instead of just typing in Python, I'm gonna do Python manage.py shell. Okay, and here I will do from polls.models import question comma choice. And then now we can play around with it. So since we don't have any questions in our system yet, when we actually look up questions and the objects for it, it should show us empty, right? Because we didn't create anything from in the question model. Okay, so if I do this .all, it should show us none. And that's exactly what it's showing us. Like, hey, the query set is actually empty. Now what we want to do is create a new question. All right. Django expects a time date. Use time zone to now instead of this, and it will do the right thing. Okay, So we're going to go from Django.utils import time zone. Okay. And what does our question take? Remember, if we look in our questions model, it takes two things. It takes a question text and a publication date. And that's what we want to give it to create a new question object. Okay. So pretty much type that in. What is it saying? It's saying, hey, I'm creating a question object. This question class essentially takes in a few things: question text and publication date. And I'm using keyword arguments. So I'm putting question underscore text equals. So for question text, it takes in a car field. So let's go actually here in models, and you can see that it takes in a character field right here, and that's why I'm actually passing it in as a string. And then publication date takes in date time field, and that's why I'm passing in the time zone dot now object. Okay, and just gonna hit enter here, and now queue is created. So I should be able to do something like well, let's follow along what their documentation is saying. But if we actually do this now, right, question.objects.all, let's see if it shows us. So that's because we haven't saved this yet. So once we save it, it's going to show up in our as one of our created objects for a question. So let's follow along. So now it says save the object into the database. You have to call save explicitly. So we're going to do that. I'm going to say q.save, and let's try it again. And now look, it shows us that there is indeed one question, and it even has a number next to it, 1. Okay, but it's not very helpful because it's not showing us what that question is, or it's not giving us a very easily readable name when we actually use this API. So I'll show you guys how to overcome that too. All right, so now it has an ID. If you do q.id, it'll show you its ID. It says access model field values via Python attributes. So I could do q.question text. So that question text right there. And it'll show us like what's new. And I can do q.publication date. And it'll show me the date as a date time object. 2018 to, which is February 19th. And let's go down here. And we can even change the values by changing the attributes and then calling save on it. Okay, so for example, before we had the question as what's new, we can now save that question as what's up. Okay, so for example, I can do q.question underscore text is equal to what's up. Okay, is that how? Yep. And I can do q.save, and now if I do q.question text, you'll see that it actually says what's up, right? Displays all the questions in the database. So now if I again do this, which you've seen, it'll show me all of the questions. Right now we only have one question. Okay, so if I wanted to add multiple questions, I could do that. You know, let's say that we add Q2, and then I do Q3, and then I go right over here. Instead of saying what's new, say what's poppin', like that. Hit enter, and now if I do question.objects.all, you can see that it shows me, oh sorry, I have to save q2.save, q3.save, and now if I do this, you'll see that it shows me I have one question, two questions, three questions, and I can even say for a question in question.objects.all, I can loop through it, print question underscore text, like that. And if I run that, it'll loop through all of these, and then it'll print out the question text. Okay, so you can do it. This is just like playing around with its API and kind of getting comfortable with it. Okay, and it goes, wait a minute, question isn't a helpful representation of this object. So let's fix that by editing the question model in the thing. So that's what I was talking about, right? Like they're saying it in their technical terms. Basically what they're saying is like, hey, look, this looks ugly as hell and doesn't give us any information like what this is about. So let's make it into something that a human can read and be like, oh, okay, I get what this question is, and it's readable, right? So that's what we want to do. All we need to do is add a string method. Okay, so we're going to add string representation to it. You'll see what I mean in just a second. So right now it just shows us like blob, like whatever, right? What we're going to do is under the class question, we're going to add string method like that. Okay, and it's going to take in self, and then we're going to say return self.question underscore text like that. Okay, so instead of showing us this, wouldn't it be nicer if it showed us the question? Because that's a much easier way of identifying what that question is when you're just looking at the list. It's just more readable that way. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing with choice. We're just going to go here, create a function or create a method, because we're inside of a class, and I will say self, and I'm going to say return self dot what do I want to do here, choice underscore text. All right, and I don't think I have to here, let's try it. Okay, cool. So now it's important to add string methods to your models, not only for your own convenience when dealing with the interactive prompt, but also because object representations are used throughout Django's automatically generated admin. So later when we go and I show you the admin, this is actually going to be helpful there, because then when we're reading these names, the admin is going to be using it. However we're showing it in the console right now, it's going to be showing it on our admin interface, right? So like imagine if you created an app and you gave it to your client where it's like a blogging app, right? Or if it's an e-commerce app, you don't want them to go to the store and when they're trying to differentiate between items, it just says item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. It'd be much nicer if it says like bicycle or watch or iPhone X or whatever they're selling, right? It'll be easier for them to identify. That's essentially what we're doing right here. Note that these are normal Python methods. Let's add a custom method just for demonstration. So they're adding a new method here, so we're going to do that. I'm going to go into my models, and we will import date time at the top, and then we're also going to import time zone, right underneath this guy, and we will add this method under a question. Okay, so was published recently is a method in the question class, so you can do like q dot was published recently, and it'll tell you what it's going to do is going to basically tell you true or false. Okay, so I think what it's checking for is like if it was published within 1 day or later than 24 hours. Let's see what this say. Note the addition of import and from Django that is import time zone to reference Python's standard datetime module and Django's time zone related utilities respectively. Save these changes and start a new Python interactive shell by running python manage.py shell again. Now, because we didn't make any changes to the models, we just added new methods. We don't have to migrate this to our database. All we need to do is just like exit out of this shell and just like come to it again. So I'm going to do exit open close paren, and I'm just going to do python manage.py shell again. And then let's see if we can get that command from polls.models. So basically from this file polls.models, I'm importing this class question and this model choice. Both are models, classes, whatever. And make sure our string, our addition is working. Okay, so now what we're gonna try to do is do the same thing, except this time it's not gonna show us question whatever. It's gonna actually show us the text of each question. So there you go. What's up? What's new? What's poppin'? Okay, much easier for us to see this. Okay. So again, think of it like if you had a fighter database, instead of it saying fighter 1, fighter 2, fighter 3, it show it to you as like Ken, Ryu, and like Sagat. Django provides a rich database lookup API. It's entirely driven by keyword arguments. Okay, so you can do something like, hey, I want you to filter by where the ID is 1. So it'll give me that specific question only. Or I can say filter by ID 2, and it'll give me the question that has the ID of 2. Okay, or I can filter by question text that says new inside of it, or what's new inside of it. Just like it's showing me here. Like if so let's try this one. Okay, so question text starts with what. Okay, so let's see. So far all of these start with a what, so it's going to show us all 3. But what if I do, instead of starts with, I say contains, and I say open. Okay, there's only one question that contains that. Okay, then later we can provide a front end to our client where you can like in the search bar type it in, but on the back end we're using this contains method to find the exact thing that you need and then return it as a response from our HTML file. Get the question that was published this year. Okay, so let's get the question that was published this year. We're gonna do this. We're gonna say current year is timezone.now.year, so that's gonna get basically 2018, right? If I do current year, it'll say 2018, and question.objects.get, where the publication date year is the current year. Okay, so let's do that. Get return more than one question, it return 3. So because we have multiple questions instead of one, ours is going to be different than theirs very slightly. Okay, so for ours, since it matches all of them, it gets like, yo, what's going on? I'm matching all of them. So, but nothing to worry about. It's still working for us. If you request an ID that doesn't exist, it will raise an exception. So for us, we do have ID too, so it won't raise an exception. But like, let's say that we try to find something with an ID of 4 or 5. Sorry, we have to do .get. It's gonna raise an exception. Okay. Also for this, let's try. So what would happen if instead of .get we use filter? Would we get an error or would we get something in return? We would get something in return, which is like all of these that match it. Okay, so the difference between filter is like return everything that matches, and get is like get one. And if more than one match, then like throw an error or something like that. Okay, so lookup by a primary key is the most common use case. So Django provides a shortcut for a primary key lookup. So the following is identical to questions.objects.getID. So PK, which is a primary key. Okay, so every model will have a primary key. So for example, question will have a primary key, choice will have a primary key. And the thing about this is, like, let's say you have a database with people in it, right? Or employee names. Well, what if you have 2 John Smith employees, right? Out of 100 employees? Or what if you have 2 Apple Watches in your e-commerce store that you're selling that have the same name, or 2 people that have the same name? How are you going to differentiate? What if they have the same email address or whatever, right? So you need one thing that's always, 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 always unique. So if you can't rely on their first name, last name, or email address or whatever else, one thing you can always rely on is a primary key. It could be an automatically generated key from Python, and it could be like random words or whatever, right? Django will handle the primary keys for you. Everything will have a primary key, even if it doesn't show it to you on the back end. This way you can always find the unique way of referring to something. Okay. All right, so let's go here, saying that make sure our custom method worked. So it says q.object.get_pk1. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is go here and say, hey, get me the object where the primary key is 1 and save it as Q. And now I'm going to ask if Q was published recently. Okay, and it says true. Okay, cool. So that's the result we got. Give the question a couple of choices. The create call constructs a new choice object, does the insert statement, adds the choices, set available choice, and returns a new choice object. Django creates a set to hold the other side of a foreign key relation. Questions for which can be accessed via the API. All right, so we're going to do this guy again. If you haven't done so already, display any choices from the related object set. So we don't have any choices so far, okay? We're right now basically voting for questions, kind of like you can upvote comments on YouTube. So now we're going to create 3 choices. So q.choiceset.create. So we're going to take a question, which is our first question, which was like, what's up? And we're going to create choice text is equal to not much with 0 votes. Okay. And you can see choice has a field called votes, and then it has choice text. So our first answer to that question, what's up, it is not much, but we're saying like, look, it only has 0 votes. Okay. Okay. And now we're going to create another choice, but called the sky. What's up, the sky? I mean, I guess that's kind of funny. I say the ceiling. And then here's another one that is, and we're going to store this one actually SC. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, so now choice objects have API access to their related question objects. Okay, so now if I do c.question, so even though I've created this model from choice, you know, you'd be looking at it, be like, hey, how does it have access to the specific question? Like, how did it access this field? Here's how I did it. Because we're saying in this question, go to the foreign key, and the foreign key is this model over here. When I do choice.question, it'll go and get the question from up there. That's essentially what it's doing, okay? So that's what, when I do c.question, that's what's happening. It's referencing and getting me back this object. Okay, and vice versa. So you can also reference from question, you could reference choice. Question objects get access to choice objects, okay? So they both have access to each other. Kind of like you can have a book and, you know, like who was the author of this book? So that relation goes to the author, and then you can say like this author has which books, and it can relate back to the books. All right, so now we're going to see how many choices we have. And so we have not much is one choice. The other one we have is the sky. And then the other choice that we have is just hacking again. All of these have 0 votes, as we see right here. And we're going to say q.choice_set.count. So this is just to count that there are actually 3 choices. The API automatically follows relationships as far as you need. Use double underscores to separate relationships. This works as many levels deep as you want. There's no limit. Find all choices for any questions whose publication date is in this year, reusing the current year variable we created above. Okay, so I can say choice.objects.filter question. Double underscore means like you are kind of going backwards. So we're saying question, and then we're going publication date. Okay, so actually we're going this question here, and then we're going publication date, and then checking the year, getting the year of that publication date. Okay, so let's try that right over here. So it's going to get us all the questions that are from this current year. So it should get us all 3 of these. Let's delete one of the choices. Use delete for that. So now what I can say is I can get the question that starts with just hacking, right? And how do I do that? I say q.choiceset.filter by where choice text starts with just hacking. Okay, so it's only going to get one question that has just hacking in there. And if I do C, it'll show you which one it is. And now to delete it, all I do is c.delete. Again, I'm copying and pasting for time purposes, saving time. But for yourself, like, take the time to actually write all of this out. Okay, this is very, very helpful for you. So now that I deleted it, it showed me that it's deleted. And if we actually check again, right, it'll only show us these 2 choices right here. Okay. Now we're going to get into a pretty exciting part, which is introducing the Django admin. And we're actually going to just touch on it a little bit. And let's get started. This is a super cool part. Philosophy. So generating admin sites for your staff or clients to add, change, and delete content is tedious work that doesn't require much creativity. Okay, it's usually like a pretty rinse and repeat process. It's frustrating. It's boring. You can make mistakes. It takes a lot of time and development, which means like it'll cost your client a lot, and it slows down your development speed. For that reason, Django entirely automates creation of admin interfaces for models. Okay, so let's check it out. The admin isn't intended to be used by site visitors. It's for site managers. Okay, so now we're going to create an admin user. I'm going to do Python manage.py create. So we're going to exit out of this. I'm going to do Python manage.py create super user. And I'll leave this blank. I'll use this email. And even though it's not going to show you anything here, it's still typing in your password. So don't worry about that. Okay, so you can put in whatever as your email, whatever as your username. And now the final step is to enter your password. I have. And now it says start the development server. So we're going to do just that. I'm going to start the development server. We're going to go to Chrome. We're going to go to our local app on 127.0.0.1:8000 port. And instead of polls, I'm actually going to go to admin. And when I go to admin, look, it brought up this nice interface that you and I did not make. We didn't make this beautiful looking form where when you hover over login, it like turns dark and looks good. And we didn't add functionality that adds security, right? We didn't add this thing where passwords automatically looks like dots so nobody can see it. All of this, keep in mind, is just automatically generated. When I click login, boom, here's the administrator interface. Okay, so as the admin, you can change your password, you can log out, you can check who are the users. So here's one user. You can like go into this user and like delete this user, or change the permissions of this user, right? So you can go and be like, boom, it's not a super user anymore, or he's not a staff anymore, it's not active anymore. Or you can go in here and like change all kinds of permissions, like can delete choice, can add a question but cannot like delete a question, can change a session but cannot delete a content type. You know, you can get like as specific with it as you want. And this is just for the model that we have registered, users. But imagine later if we register our choice model and whatever, those will all show up right over here. And any recent actions that you do actually show up on the right hand side. So imagine like somebody deleted something. You're like, what the hell happened? Like one part of our app or this website is now broken. Well, if you go into recent actions, you'll see what took place and exactly who did it and who'd hold responsible for that. I think that's pretty cool, right? And it comes built in right out of the gate. That's one of the reasons why Django is such a powerful tool, and it fosters productivity and effectiveness, I believe, over any other framework, right? And their tagline, which is awesome, it's Django is for perfectionists with deadlines. And that's what I believe in too. Like if I have to put a project together and I'm doing something solo, I'm going Django all day, baby. But if you're working on some long-term project, you're going to be doing for a long time and nothing else really matters, then yeah, you can choose whatever you want. But I like speed, I like productivity, I like to take my ideas from my head and launch them online fast. All right, with that said, let's go back and see what they're saying. So we go to our admin, enter the admin site, and now it says make the poll app modifiable in the admin. How do we do that? We're gonna take these 3 lines of code. So I'm gonna go into my poll/admin. And this line is already added, so I'm not going to add it in. From .models import question. Okay. So basically what I'm saying is from this directory, get the models. So right here. And import the class question from the models. Okay. So import the question model. And then I'm going to say register that model inside of admin. So check out what happens. Okay, this is super cool. Check it out. I'm gonna hit save, and let's go back to our app and let's hit refresh, and look at that, it's here. So that questions model is the one we made. It shows under polls, questions, and you can see all of those questions, what's popping, what's new. You can go in and you can change the text. So I can change it to like what's cracking, right? I can hit save, and now it's changed. And if I go to if I start Python manage.py shell from polls dot models import question dot objects dot all, right? Look, it says what's cracking. So what we actually changed from the GUI interface with our mouse and our keyboard is now showing up in our database, in our local database, the SQLite database that's actually being stored on our computer. This database is not online yet. So pretty freaking cool, right? How quickly and how effectively it works. So I'm going to exit out of this. I'm going to run my server again. And we're going to go back to the app, refresh. Cool. And let's see what they're saying. Now that we have registered question, Django knows that it should be displayed on the admin index page, and it is, right? And I showed it to you. And we went inside of it and we saw question text and we saw date published, and we can actually change the date published and everything. Now, things to note here. The form is automatically generated from the question model. So this form is automatically generated. We didn't need to generate anything. The different model field types, date time field and car field. So remember, we had one of the models as a date time field and the other one is car field. And you can see where it says date published, look, date field, right? And for question text, it's just a straight up character field, or what you know in Python to be as string. These correspond to the appropriate HTML input widget. Each type of field knows how to display itself in the Django admin. Pretty cool. Each datetime field gets free JavaScript shortcuts. Woohoo! Free JavaScript shortcuts. That's awesome. So normally you'd have to write JavaScript for all this stuff, but look at this. Okay, so let's say I go to what's cracking and I click here. Boom, look at this beautiful datetime picker thing opens up, and you could pick today, or you could pick another date and it'll automatically pick it, and you could pick the time, and that's cool. This is something you'd have to write a lot of manual JavaScript for that's automatically written for you. Dates get a today shortcut and calendar pop-up, and times get a now shortcut and convenient pop-up that lists commonly entered times. The bottom part of the page gives you a couple of options, right? So save saves changes and returns to the change list page for this type of object. So you can do save, Or you can do save and continue editing, so continue editing the same page. Or you can do save and add another, so add a new question and go, right? Or you can do delete, which displays a delete confirmation page. So check this out, okay? Normally when you hit, you have to add all this functionality, plus when you hit delete, you have to then remember to add a confirmation thing to it, and they have it automatically. So if I hit delete, it'll be like, are you sure you want to delete the question, what's cracking? All of the following related items will be deleted. Questions 1, so only one question, and objects, what's cracking? You can say, yes, I'm sure, or no, take me back. Now notice, it's showing the question as what's cracking. That's because of your string method that you added, your str method. If you did not have that, it would not show like what's cracking. It would show like question 1, and you would just have to use your memory to remember that. I'm going to say, no, take me back, and it'll take me back, okay? Cool. Let's go back. Let's see what they're saying here. And then if the value of the date published doesn't match the time you created, it probably means you forgot to set the time. We can also set the current time zone, right? So that's not a big deal. If I go in history here, it says I changed it at 3 a.m. It's not 3 a.m. right now. So that means like I need to go inside of my settings and in my time zone and change what my time zone is. So for example, I think there's like America / Los Angeles, something like that. Oh, it actually worked. Sweet. For yourself, just look up like time zone, Django time zone settings, and then find yours and put that in. For me, I put this in and it fixed my time instantly, right? Okay, so yeah, essentially that's it for part 2. I hope you thought it was phenomenal. I mean, this is so cool, you guys, and Django is just so powerful. So that's it for this part, guys. I really hope you're excited about this thing. We're gonna go on to part 3, but before I end this, I do gotta let you know that if you are serious about web development, becoming a web developer that gets paid what he deserves, you want to learn more in depth about Django and take your game to the next level, I have my new course coming out. It's called The Profitable Programmer. I only open it up a couple of times in a year. Okay, so it's a pretty exclusive course. If you want to join it, go to this link, or I'll have it below in the description as well, and join the VIP waitlist, which is free to join. You'll be the first one to know when the course opens up, and plus, as my gift to you, I'll give you the top resources I use to become a software developer in less than 3 months, okay? And you're going to have access to that for free, okay? All of that, I'm going to give it to you as a gift to join the VIP waitlist. That's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next video. For those of you guys wondering, what the hell is this choice.set thing? It actually comes built in, and you can actually change that by passing in a related name keyword argument when you're creating the question attribute, and you could give it whatever name you want.